Okay, Mr. Mayor, we are now live. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will call this meeting to order. I see we have a quorum of council. We have a few members missing. I believe Councillor Thompson will probably join us a little bit later. Approval of the agenda. Is there any add-ons to our agenda here tonight? I assume everybody can hear me because I know.
I can hear you.
Oh, hi, Ryan. Councillor Thompson. Okay, if there's no approval of the agenda, the recommendation is that the agenda be approved as presented. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Deputy Mayor, go ahead. No?
No, I was just seconding the motion.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I call your name, please indicate your vote. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
Or.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries. And for the record, both Councillor Paul Sutherland and Councillor Grant Pringle have sent their regrets this evening.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Declaration of pecuniariensis. You can declare anytime you see fit during the meeting. Minutes of the previous minutes. I have a recommendation here that the minutes of the council meeting held on April 21st, 2021 be approved. Someone to move it, put it on the floor, please. Moved by
Also
Councillor
moved.
Thompson. Second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, take the vote, please. No? You can't hear me?
I can hear you. I was just indicating there was no discussion. So through you, I will take the vote on the minutes of the previous meeting. So when I call your name, please indicate your vote. Councillor Carol Barfoot. Councillor Barfoot.
Quick question, Madam Clerk. Does that include the committee of the whole minutes?
That does not include the committee of the whole minutes. This is just the council meeting minutes of April 21st.
Okay, I just don't want to miss that one. Thank you. Okay, for.
Thank you, Councillor Barfoot. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
Or.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
Or.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thank you. We are now down to announcements. Do we have any announcements here tonight? Did our Director of Operations have an announcement, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I believe our Director of Operations wished to announce that this week is Public Works Recognition Week, so thereby wanting to recognize the efforts of our Operations Department.
Okay, thank you for that. If there's no other announcements, I'll move on to our agenda.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Coburn has her hand raised.
Terry, go ahead, Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Mayor Burley. In light of the last announcement, I would also like to give a shout out to the nurses on Nurses Week and to thank them, especially the ones working on the front lines throughout this time of pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. So moving on for our agenda, we are down to public hearings. A recommendation here that the regular meeting of council be recessed to hold a public meeting for consideration of zoning bylaw amendments, applications Z0521 242161 concession tree for Ronald and Patty Davy, and Z0421 341065 concession 14 for Cody Wagner. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. I believe it's moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, you take the vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I call your name, please indicate your vote. Councillor Carol Barfoot. Councillor Barfoot, you are muted.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn.
4.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
4.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thank you. I would like to call this public meeting to order. This meeting has been called for the purpose of considering an application for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application Z0521 for Ronald and Patty Davy for property located at 242161 Concession 3. Would the clerk please advise those present as to the method by which the notice of this motion was given? Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Notice of this public meeting was given by ordinary mail to all property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject property by email to all of the prescribed bodies on March 22nd, 2021, posted at the subject property and posted on the Township of Georgian Bluffs website. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Georgian Bluffs before the proposed zoning bylaw is adopted or passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of Georgian Bluffs to the local planning appeal tribunal, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal, unless, in the opinion of said tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would the planner please explain the purpose and effect of the proposed application, whether any correspondence has been received to date? Jen, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So the purpose of this zoning bylaw amendment is to seek relief to the minimum required lot frontage for a rural non-farm residential lot. And that is to facilitate a severance for a lot addition and enable that lot addition to occur. So the report before council tonight is actually a joint report. It's also going to be considered by the Committee of Adjustment on May 18th. So basically, Braun and Patty Davy own the property. They own two properties side by side, and what they would like to do is add the majority of lot 14 to lot 15 and keep about a 1.5 hectare parcel separate. The lands are largely wetland, hazard land, and rural, and we had the application reviewed by the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority as a service provider to the township. And they support the application because there's no development proposed within the hazard features, the heritage features, or their adjacent lands. So as presented in the planning report, the application does meet provincial policy, the County of Grey official plan, which is what we use to implement that provincial policy, as well as the intent of the Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw. So we did circulate this application to various agencies, and we received comments from the Township of Georgian Bluffs Operations Department. They noted that an entrance permit would be required for the parcel to the west. The Grey Sauble Conservation Authority the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority noted no objection to the approval of the applications, as there is ample space on the easterly parcel to accommodate future development outside of any hazard areas. The Grey County Planning and Development Department have no concerns with the applications, provided that the consent is approved for a lot addition purpose and the two larger parcels are merged together as proposed. The Risk Management Office out of the Grace Sauble Authority, Conservation Authority, and the Historic Saugeen Métis, they have no objection or opposition to the application. We circulated this application to all property owners within 120 meters of these properties, and no written comments were received. So in conclusion, the recommendation is to approve the application this evening if there are no concerns raised. And I believe that Mr. Ron Davidson, who is the planning consultant on the application, is here this evening and is available to answer questions.
Thank you, Jen. No member of the public registered with the clerk to provide comments in support or opposition to the application. The agent, Mr. Ron Davison, registered to speak on behalf of the owners. Mr. Davison, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you and good evening. Can you hear me okay, first of all?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. I turned the mic on like a good boy. So Jennifer explained this very clearly what they're proposing to do. Ron and Patricia, they own two large properties. One has a house, the other doesn't. What they want to do is they want to build a brand new home on the vacant lot, but they don't want to. They want to keep it. They want to keep all the forested land, because it's really nice property. They walk through there. There's quite a bit of wetland, but these are really two nice properties. So what they would like to do is on the parcel that they're keeping and building a house, they'd like to add a lot of the wooded area from the other parcel. That's it. And really all council's dealing with tonight is the idea of reduced lot frontage, as Jen indicated. We're not dealing with an undersized lot in terms of lot area. It's just lot frontage. It's certainly consistent with the other lots in the area. And that's it. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Ron. Does council have any questions regarding the proposed application? Deputy Mayor Carlton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you to staff, just a question, is that lot with is undersized for frontage, is that where the current buildings are? So they're literally severing off the existing buildings and they're going to build on the other section?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Does council have any other questions on this application? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, I'll move on. Council will consider all matters placed before it prior to submitting their comments to the applicant. May I have adjournment of this public meeting? Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by Councillor Thompson. Show of hands, all in favor? And Councillor Barfoot, I cannot see you. I did. Thanks, Carol. It's carried. I have a recommendation here. It has been demonstrated that the application Z0521 for Ron Davies for lands described as concession 4, part lot 14, capital is consistent with the provincial policy statement 2020, the County of Gray official plan, recolored gray, and intent of the Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw 2020. If no concerns are raised at the public meeting, it is recommended that the application be approved. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, you take the vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I call your name, please indicate your vote. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
4.
Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn.
4.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
Or
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thank you. Moving on for our second public meeting, I would like to call this public meeting. This meeting has been called for the purpose of considering an application for proposed zoning bylaw amendment application Z0421 for Cody Wagner for the property located at 341065, concession 14. Would the clerk please advise those present as to the method by which the notice of this motion was given? Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Notice of this public meeting was given by ordinary mail to all property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject property, by email to all of the prescribed bodies on April 7, 2021, posted at the subject property and posted on the Township of Georgian Bluffs website. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Georgian Bluffs before the proposed zoning bylaw is adopted or passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of Georgian Bluffs to the local planning appeal tribunal, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party.
Thank you. Would the planner please explain the purpose and effect of the proposed application and whether any correspondence has been received to date? Jan, go ahead.
Thank you. So the purpose of this application is to seek permission to build a 1,600 square foot, 2-story secondary suite or second dwelling unit in a new 3,600 square foot farm storage building. And the location of this structure would be approximately 117 meters west of the existing house. So while the lands are designated agricultural in the County of Grey official plan, with a small portion of hazard in the northwest corner. The county official plan does have policies that promote a variety of housing to meet needs of area residents and identifies, that secondary suites will be a way of achieving affordable housing in rural areas in Grey County. So the county official plan does support the application. The plan also addresses that when you add a secondary unit to a property in the rural or agricultural area, it should be located within the existing farm cluster. The purpose of that is to stop, is to reduce opportunities to take viable farmland out of production. If you have a structure on it, then it reduces the amount of land that can be used for the farming operation. So clustering the buildings together in one location on the property helps to reduce opportunities to decrease amount of viable farmland, as well as it's more efficient to service them if they're in a cluster. So you could more easily share the well. In this situation, the property owner has identified that where the existing building cluster is, it's in a lower point in the property. So it does accumulate water. So the water drains down. And so in the future, what the property owner would like to do is, after this storage building is constructed, would look at building a new house adjacent to this farm storage structure and out of the lower lying wet area. And also too, it would be further away from the livestock occupied portion of the barn. So the county has reviewed the application and are satisfied that that justification meets the intent of the county official plan. With our zoning bylaw, secondary units are permitted as of right in this zone, in the agricultural zone. However, they're only permitted in a structure that's ancillary to a residential use. So because it's an accessory unit, it's got to be accessory to a residential use, not to a farm use. So locating it in the farm accessory structure doesn't meet the intent of the zoning bylaw. So that's why the application is coming forward. I did have a discussion with the chief building official, and I did talk to the property owner, and the unit will be built in accordance with the Ontario Building Code for accessory structures. I had some concerns about it being in a farm accessory structure, but there are apparently ways to construct it so that it meets building code for a habitable structure. So the application was circulated to various agencies, and the Township of Georgian Bluffs Operations Department, they note that grading and drainage plans will be required at the building permit stage. The Gray Salt Authority, the Gray County Planning and Development Department, the Risk Management Office, and the Bruce Gray Catholic District School Board, as well as the Historic Saugeen Métis, have no comments or objections to the applications. Enbridge Gas did review the application as well, and they note that there may or may not be service lines running in that area. So any service relocation will be at the expense of the property owner, and the property owner is required to contact Enbridge Gas to address development on that site. We did get comments from the neighbor on this application, and as I've indicated in the report, Kevin and Jacqueline Muir provided comments where they expressed concern with the location of the structure and the potential for their internet connection to be interrupted. I did forward their comments and concerns to the agent for the application, and so the property owner did go and speak with his neighbors to address concerns. And I received an email back from Jacqueline and Kevin stating that they have worked with Cody Wagner to resolve the internet issues. So the Muir's comments are attached for council's review to the report. And I know that the agent for the application, Ron Davidson, is here, and I'm not sure if Cody is on the call in the meeting as well, and can address concerns about internet connectivity for council. So just in conclusion, it's been demonstrated that the application is consistent with provincial policy, the county official plan, and the intent of the zoning bylaw. If no concerns are raised at the meeting tonight, my recommendation is to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. No member of the public registered with the clerk to provide comments and support off or opposition to the applicant. Have the owners. Mr. Davidson, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think the owner might be watching, but I don't think he'll be able to dial in and answer any of the questions, but I'm sure I can answer everything. First of all, Cody is a farmer, and he farms these lands, and his mom and dad, or his dad anyways, helps out on the farm. So they want to live on the farm as well, and that's the whole idea of in the short term having mom and dad there to help out on the farm, and in the longer term, again, what Jen was saying, the provincial policy statement or the provincial government has been for the last 4 or 5, 6 years really encouraging us, everybody, every municipality, to change their zoning bylaws and official plans to allow for a secondary dwelling unit, not necessarily for mom or dad or a sort of a family member that can't get around very well, but just for anybody in general. But anyway, so this is going to help Cody out very well. As Jen indicated, that the house and barn where they're located now, they are definitely in a low-lying area. I was there when it was mucky out, and I could only imagine what it would be like when the rain starts coming down. You certainly wouldn't want to build any more buildings in that little hollow there. So they're moving it to the west. And just to be clear, there's nothing to stop them from building a building where they want to today. The question is, but can they put the residents in there as well? So they could get a building permit presumably tomorrow to build the farm implement component of the building, but to allow for a residential unit in it, that's what we're talking about. So the building can be put where it is. I guess just one last thing. Yeah, the neighbor did indicate that they had some issues originally, and Jen was good enough to pass those comments along to us. And Cody went over and spoke with the neighbor, and that neighbor has since put something back in writing to Jen, I think, that says, you know, they're okay, and maybe they're on the line, and maybe they'll say as much. Cody, I believe he told me this morning, I think he said he was there last night talking to them again about the internet issue, and he'll do whatever he has to do. If they have to, I think it comes down to a satellite dish that's on a tree or something like that. And Cody, I think, is willing to move it for them or do whatever it takes to make them happy. The bottom line, though, is again, that building can go there today, whether or not there's a house, a residential component. The building can go there, but the bottom line again, though, is also he's going to work with his neighbor. They're going to live right across the street from him. They don't want to upset them, and it's my understanding that both parties are now happy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Does council have any questions regarding the proposed application? Deputy Mayor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In driving out there today to just familiarize myself with the property, question I have is around entrance permit. Or the entrance to the property? Will this secondary unit and new farm building use that same entrance, or will there be a second one? Because it would put it kind of right at the brow of the hill by the looks of it to me, but maybe I'm wrong.
Ron, do you want to answer that, or?
Yes, sorry, was the question, sorry, that will there be a brand new entrance for this building?
Yes, that's what I was wondering. Will it use that same entrance, or it will be a brand new one at the top of the hill there?
Yeah, it can't use the same entrance for where the house and the barn is. It's down too low, and you'd have to drive up a hill, turn left, and then come back south again. So it'll be a new entrance, yes.
Thank you.
And that would comply with the zoning as well, as there's enough frontage there to allow for two residential entrances, provided that it meets the conditions of the entrance permit.
Does council have any other questions? Seeing none, council will consider all matters placed before prior to submitting their comments to the applicant. May I call for an adjournment of this public meeting? Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Councillor Barfoot. Show of hands, all in favor of adjournment of the public meeting? Thank you. It's carried. I have a recommendation here. It has been demonstrated that application Z0421 for Cody Wagner for lands described as part lot 9, concession 14 is consistent with the provincial policy statement 2020 official plan recolor gray and intent of the Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning 2020. If no concerns are raised at the public meeting on May 12, 2020, it is recommended that the application be approved. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Madam Clerk, if you take the vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I call your name, please indicate your vote. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
4.
Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn.
4.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
4.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Thank you, and that carries.
Madam Clerk, I will point out my internet keeps cutting in and out occasionally, so bear with me. Okay. Moving off agenda, we have no presentations, no delegations. The consent agenda. Does any member of council wish to pull any item off the consent agenda for further discussion? Seeing none?
Mr. Mayor?
Recommendation is in that Councillor Barfoot, go ahead.
Okay. I'm having problems with my famous iPad again. And I want to pull something and I'm afraid I'll miss it. So I'll give it to Brittany. It's 12.1.1. It's page 7 of the committee of the whole, 9.1, 9.2.
Thank you, Councillor Barfoot. We're just considering the consent agenda, but when we get to the committee of the whole minutes, we will pull that item for further discussion.
Well, I have everybody's picture up here, but I seem to have lost my agenda. So,
Okay, when we get to item 12, we can specifically call upon you.
would you please? Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Councilor Barfoot, we'll make sure we get that when we get down to the committee of the whole. If there's no item going to be pulled from the consent agenda, Madam Clerk, I believe I call for move. Have you heard the motion yet?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. You did call for a mover, or apologies. Yes, you did call for Mr. Mayor, you did call for a mover and a seconder for the consent agenda. If we are ready and there's no items to be pulled, I will call the vote.
I do not believe there is any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I call your name, please indicate your vote for adoption of the consent agenda. Councillor Carol Barfoot. Councillor Barfoot, you are muted.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
4.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
4.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thank you. We're down to correspondence. The first correspondence from, it was pulled, I believe, by Deputy Mayor Carlton to do with Honorable Alec Ruff. Deputy Mayor Carlton, you want to speak to this first?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was actually one that came out in an email, I think probably to everyone. And I just asked to have it on an agenda, as I think that's quite important that we support that. I like the idea of similar to 911 and 988 number that is easier for people to remember than a 10-digit number to call if they need help, sort of mental health help. So I think it's important that we show support for that for Mr. Ruff.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Madam Clerk, I believe you have a motion there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to note that further to the correspondence included in your agenda this evening, there is a draft motion for council's consideration. If council wishes to do so this evening, we can simply amend that motion to include the Township of Georgian Bluffs and pass it here tonight. Otherwise, if council needs more information, staff can take it back and provide a notice of motion for the June 2nd council meeting.
Councilor Barfoot, did I see your hand up?
Councillor Barfoot, you are muted.
Okay, sorry. I feel like I'm swallowing into deep water here. Is this about Canada Post? No, okay. Okay, I'm gonna sign off because I can't fill in the blanks. I've lost my copy of the agenda. So just, I'm gonna sign off and see if I can go in a different way.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barfoot. If we can assist you in any way, please let us know.
Deputy Mayor Carlton, I see your hand is up.
I'm just wondering if we can allow 2 or 3 minutes, take a bit of a break to allow Councillor Barfoot to get back on here. I think it's important we have everybody's input.
No, I agree. We can, Madam Clerk will just stay live, but just have a
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have frozen, so through you, we will take a brief 5-minute recess.
All the information from around the world and the reports of the experiences. Information is being shared so that we can learn.
Can't.
If you're very big for us. And, these are
Okay, just a minute.
Madam Clerk, how are we making out?
Just a couple more minutes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, how are you making out?
Okay, we're good to go. Councillor Barfoot is back in the meeting and she has access to the agenda. We may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now, Deputy Mayor Carlton, you were trying to present this motion from Honorable Alec Ruff. And Madam Clerk, I'm asking, should we bring this back as a notice of motion at a future meeting?
You have that option. You also have the option to move and second the motion that's in front of you, being the draft motion amended to read the Township of Georgian Bluffs in the blank spaces. So we can pass it this evening, or you may provide a notice of motion and we'll pass it on the second.
So I guess I'm going to ask the will of council. Does council want to bring it back as a notice of motion or amend the existing motion we have now? And maybe I could have a show of hands who wants to proceed tonight. I can't see Councilor Todd. Yes. Looks like we're going to proceed tonight, Madam Clerk. So would you please revise that motion and read it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I will first read the motion and then I will ask for a mover and a seconder. So the motion as amended will read, whereas the federal government has passed a motion to adopt 988, a national 3-digit suicide and crisis hotline, and whereas the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has increased the demand for suicide prevention services by 200%, and whereas existing suicide prevention hotlines require the user to remember a 10-digit number and go through directories or be placed on hold, and whereas in 2022, the United States will have in place a national 988 crisis hotline, and whereas the Township of Georgian Bluffs recognizes that it is a significant and important initiative to ensure critical barriers are removed to those in a crisis and seeking help, now therefore be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bluffs endorses this 988 crisis line initiative, and that staff be directed to send a letter indicating such support to the local MP, MPP, Federal Minister of Health, the CRTC, and local area municipalities to indicate our support.
So Deputy Mayor Carlton, you want to move that motion?
Yes, I would like to move that motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do I have a seconder for the motion as read? Moved by Councilor Colburn. So there's no discussion. There's no discussion on the motion. Madam Clerk, you take the vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I call your name, please indicate your vote. Councillor Carol Barfoot. And Councillor Barfoot, you are muted.
Opposed.
Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn.
4.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
4.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thank you. Moving on for agenda, we're down to committee reports. I have a recommendation here that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held on May 5th, 2021 be adopted, including recommendations COW 2021-47 to COW 2021-052, last item 12.1.1 for further discussion. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Deputy Mayor, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the motion reads, it does not exclude item 12.1.1 as of yet. So the motion stands just as including recommendation COW 2021-47 to COW 2021-52.
But I added to the bottom of that, Madam Clerk, that we would remove item 12.1.1 for further discussion. Can I do that?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there any other items that are to be pulled from these minutes?
Councillor Colburn, I see your hands up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I was trying to lower my hand and probably wasn't fast enough. I was just going to ask that 12.1.1 be pulled as well. So thank you.
Okay. I believe that's all the items are going to be pulled, Madam Clerk, so please take the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I call your name, please indicate your vote. Councillor Carol Barfoot,
Which one are we voting on? Geez.
Councillor Barfoot, we are at item 12, committee reports. Per the request of both Mayor Burley and Councillor Coburn, we have removed item 12.1, being the report regarding the budget.
Okay, that's 12.1.1.
That's correct.
That's right.
I'm opposed.
So Councillor Barfoot, you are opposed to the motion as presented, being adoption of the minutes with the exception of 12.1.1.
Okay. Let's get this clear. I made note here, I went through the committee of the whole minutes. And in that last meeting, it was reported that I opposed the vacancy tax rate. I didn't oppose that.
Thank you, Councillor Barfoot. So what Councillor Barfoot is referring to is an error in the committee of the whole minutes, specifically that she was listed as opposed to item 12.1.2, whereas she should have been listed as opposed to 12.1.1. So Councillor Barfoot, that is noted and the minutes will be amended as such. So therefore, I think we need to take this in two parts here for everyone's comprehension purposes. So first, we'll take the vote on the committee of the whole minutes, and the motion will be as follows. That the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on May 5th, 2021 be adopted as amended, including recommendations COW 2021-048 to COW 2021-052. So Councillor Barfoot, that is reflective of your amendment, and Mayor Burley and Councillor Coburn, it is reflective of your request to remove that item.
That's correct.
Thank you, Brittany. I thought I was never
So,
going to.
Madam Clerk,
So, Mr. Mayor, through you, we have a mover and a seconder. If there's no further discussion, I'll take the vote. Councillor Carol Barfoot,
yes. You can go ahead.
Pardon?
Councillor Carol Barfoot, I am calling the vote on the amended motion.
Oh, okay, 4, I guess.
Thank you. Do you require further clarification prior to casting your vote?
I just want to be assured that it's corrected for the record.
That is correct, Councillor Barfoot. You have amended the motion to reflect as amended.
Thank you. 4.
Thank you. Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn.
4.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carleton.
4.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Thank you, and that carries. And Mr. Mayor, you may now call for further discussion on item 12.1.1.
Okay, Madam Clerk, is there any other discussion 12.1.1 other than Councillor Barfoot was correcting the minutes to reflect her vote was not correct, and now that has been taken care of. So is there any other discussion on this item we pulled? Councillor Coburn?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. You're referring then to the correction in 12.1.2. Are you asking that we're discussing the other item that's being pulled at this time, which is 12.1.1?
That is correct.
I do have some comments, if now is the right time, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
So we had a very brief discussion about this item at our meeting of Committee of the Whole last week. And I know we had a vote. I went away feeling pretty uncomfortable about it. And procedurally, I don't know if I can ask for a revote or just a discussion for now. This has to do with the passing of the budget. And while I believe it was an excellent budget in many ways and was very, very reasonable and includes many of the elements that I think are important and that we've neglected in the past, I am uncomfortable with accepting the almost $500,000 budget line for the continued operation of the airport. I was hoping to be able to read the draft copy of the feasibility study before the meeting tonight, but that apparently is not available to me. I thought that that would help to inform my decision further regarding that part of the budget. I'm reluctant to want to support a budget that continues to ask that the airport be funded by the ratepayers of Georgian Bluffs. I think that close to $500,000 in a year would be better spent on more recreation and improving some of our parklands and trails, and going perhaps even towards some of the community centers that are needing repairs and renovations. So procedurally, Mr. Mayor, I'm not really sure where we go with this. Can we have a little bit more of a discussion? Can we, is it reasonable to ask for a vote to reconsider? Where do you recommend that we go from here?
I recommend we go to the Madam Clerk to give us direction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Councillor Coburn. Councillor Coburn, the motion that's included in the Committee of the Whole minutes simply triggered the bylaw that has been presented for your consideration this evening, which formalizes the operating and capital budgets. So should Council feel as though they are not ready to pass the budget here this evening, we will simply defer both this motion and said bylaw to a future meeting, pending further information that Council wishes to see. And, you know, if that's the case, then I would request that we be specific in the information that we're looking for staff to provide so that we may do so sooner than later. Councillor
Coburn, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Burley. I'm specifically looking for information that has to do with expert reports that were provided in the past regarding contamination at the airport and recommendations for containment for that contamination. I apologize for asking for that information at such short notice. I know that seems vastly unfair, but I wasn't made aware that these reports were available, even as it predates my time on council, until very recently. So I would like to have that information. I also continue to want to look at the feasibility study. As I said earlier, that is going to help inform my decision going forward regarding the airport. This is already May the 12th. I wonder how great an impact it would really be to wait another couple of weeks to approve this budget if it means that we can get that feasibility study in our hands and take a better look at it.
Madam Clerk, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can hear you, and our CAO has his hand raised.
Yes. Sir, I keep cutting out. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. We can certainly defer the budget tonight if you'd like, but I will caution you that there's no guarantee that the feasibility study from the consultant is going to be ready in a couple of weeks. I did speak to the consultant today. Work is continuing. There's still some final analysis being done, some information gathering. So I'd be hesitant to commit that we would have that information for you within the next couple of weeks to ease your decision-making process so that you can better make a decision on the airport and this budget. So I would just a word of caution that if we want to defer this until that feasibility study is completed, it may be more than 2 weeks away from having that information in council's hands.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Madam Clerk, we do have a bylaw on our agenda here tonight for paying the 2021 budget, do we not? Could we not have a further discussion at that time when that budget or when that bylaw is presented to talk about the budget itself at that time, and we'll have further discussions on the airport? I think we're getting the two items confused, unless I'm misunderstanding. Councillor Colburn, you have great concerns and great questions, and not deal with our budget part and deal with the airport part as two separate items. I'm looking for direction, Mr. CEO.
Councillor Coburn had her hand raised, Mr. Mayor, if we may go to her first.
Sorry, Councillor Coburn, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Burley. So you may be quite right. I just wasn't sure if I vote to approve this slate of reports under Committee of the Whole, am I then voting in favor of adopting the budget? I see Deputy Mayor shaking her head and the Mayor, but I would really prefer to hear the answer from our trustee clerk, if I may. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. And no, the Deputy Mayor and the Mayor are correct. You are not voting to necessarily approve the budget. You are just voting to ratify the recommendation out of Committee of the Whole. The budget is not final until the bylaw is enacted further in this agenda, being bylaw 2021-37.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, sorry, I'm not sure if you're frozen again, but I'm happy to leave this until the item that falls under the bylaws and in agenda item number 15. And I'm sorry for bringing this up at the wrong time. I'll remember that for next time.
Madam Clerk, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And prior to making my comments, Councillor Barfoot has her hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I would just like to repeat a comment that was made to me probably 2 months ago. And it was about how come now all your meetings is just, the motion is read and it's passed. There's no discussion. No one is questioning anything. We all sat there and said about integrity and clarity and honesty and all that. Well, guess what, folks? There are some people out there that are questioning how come none of us are questioning anything. And I have to agree with them. So let's remember why we're here.
Okay, Madam Clerk, I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just procedurally now, we do have the outstanding recommendation from the Committee of the Whole minutes that we do need to vote to ratify. So that would be recommendation COW 2021-047. So if I could just have a show of hands for all those in favor of adoption of that motion through the amended minutes. And Councillor Barfoot, if you could either raise your virtual hands or indicate your vote.
4.
Thank you, Councillor Barfoot. That was carried. And Mr. Mayor, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. For the sake of seeming totally confused, which I am. Kirk, can you advise me what part of the agenda we're on? We're down to public question period.
We are not, no, we are down to staff reports, 13.1, that of the CAO.
Thank you. Authorize
Mr. Mayor.
CAO and organizational next steps. And that's a recommendation.
Mr. Mayor. I apologize for the interruption, but if I may, through you, I would like to present the motion simply because you're cutting in and out for transparency's sake. So through you, I will read the motion and you may place it on the floor. So the motion for consideration this evening reads that council received the report dated May 12th, 2021, authored by Al Menezes, CAO, entitled Organizational Review, Recommendations, and Next Steps, and that recommendations as included in the report are hereby approved, including amendments to the township pay grid and organizational structure, and that the financial impacts of the included recommendations be funded in part by the modernization grant and scheduled strategic implementation of new staffing positions as identified in this report, thereby remaining cost neutral to the township 2021 budget and tax rate, and that a bylaw to authorize the amended pay grid be presented at the June 2nd meeting of council.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Someone to put on the floor, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by Councillor Thompson. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Councillor Colburn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to reiterate in the public's eye that I remain not particularly impressed by the consultant's report. And in particular, I had issue with some of the comparators that they recommended we use in the salary review for our municipality. Having said that, I do understand that the recommendations brought forward by our CAO have some flexibility to it. And so that I believe that we will be entrusting our CAO to ensure that our salaries strike the right balance between us remaining reasonably competitive and financially responsible. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any other discussion on the motion before us? Deputy Mayor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering if the CAO is going to speak to the report before we carry on with further discussion, or if we should ask questions now.
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor Carlton, I did not hear a word you said.
I was wondering if the CAO was going to speak to his report before we went ahead with discussion and questions.
He can if we wish. I'll go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've actually prepared a very brief presentation, and with the assistance of the clerk and hopefully with some clouds that will cover the full moon that's out here tonight, we can get through this without me cutting in and out and having some technical difficulties. So Brittany, if you can just do that for me. Just by way, councillors, if you have any questions as I'm going through sort of an overview, please feel free to interrupt at any time. I am unable to see all of you, so please just speak up and interrupt at any time. Next slide, Brittany. So as far as the agenda, I'm just going to go very quickly through a little bit of a background and an overview. I'm going to have a little overview of our current situation. I will then summarize the recommendations that are presented in front of council, and then we'll talk about next steps. Next slide, Rick. Okay, So following a competitive process, council engaged Pesce and Associates in late 2020 to complete an organizational review and recommend an optimal organizational structure based on staff, functions, processes, objectives, to deliver priority programs and services as efficiently and as effectively as possible. In addition, the project scope also included a review of the township's compensation program to ensure we were market competitive. On April 21st, the consultants made 2 presentations to council, a report that defined the project scope and detailed the process that was undertaken to arrive at the recommendations, and then provided council with a more in-depth summary of the findings and recommendations for council's consideration. The consultant used various comparators to assess the most optimal organizational structure and to recommend compensation adjustments. It's also important to realize that these recommendations form an important building block to setting up a foundation for future success within the administration in Georgian Bluffs. The marketplace is changing, talent is becoming very competitive, and Georgian Bluffs needs to stay competitive to attract and retain the top talent possible. Next slide, Madam Clerk. In terms of the current situation, everyone knows council now has a strategic plan to help guide our priorities and work plans. Guided by the strategic plan, staff can now create annual departmental work plans and individual goals to support council's term of council priorities and help establish a roadmap for long-term success. To help achieve and support our collective goals for the community, council now has an opportunity to refine our organizational structure. Senior management team will include 6 departmental heads and the CAO. They will work together weekly. They will share ideas, share challenges, and work together to eliminate silos and collectively move the organization and our community forward. With that structural refinement, council can now also complement the structure with pay policies that better reflect a workplace culture that promotes and rewards teamwork, customer service, and results.
Al, I see Councillor Barfoot has her hand up.
Okay, Councillor Barfoot, go ahead. I apologize.
No, I apologize for interrupting you, but you said something there that I thought I better jump and find out. So what you're saying is our strategic plan is finished then? So is our parks and recreation, is that finished? Because all those things form part of the strategic plan. I wasn't aware that they were finished.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, if you define finished by all the objectives have been completed, absolutely not. I define finished as the document is ready and it now provides a roadmap for staff to try to achieve the objectives within those specific documents. So council has passed a strategic plan and now we're working towards achieving those goals. Council has passed a recreation and trails master plan and we are working towards achieving those goals as well. And by putting the structure in place and putting the right people in the right positions, we can better help council achieve those goals and objectives as defined within those reports.
I must be misunderstanding the word finished. When something is finished, it's done. So how do you get the strategic plan is finished? The parks and recreation form part of that strategic plan. They're not finished.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, understood. I understand the definition of finished. So I will say that the documents are ready. The documents have been approved by council and now staff are working towards achieving those objectives within those reports.
I guess I'm getting a little shy when I keep hearing, you know, they're going to be finished. It's going to be done. It's going to be done. I know, Mr. Menzies, you don't like me living in the past, but once bit, twice shy. Let's face it. I need to something that is finished with a great big period or an exclamation mark at the end of it.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, not to get into a long debate, I would suspect, Councillor, that as council, you're never going to be finished completely in terms of a strategic plan or all the various master plans. You will be reviewing those on a regular basis, whether it's every second term of council, whether it's every term of council, you'll be adapting and adopting to the new priorities within your community. So these will be living, breathing documents. But what I'm referring to is you now have a document that council has approved that we're using as our roadmap to getting things done and those objectives that were defined within those specific plans that were approved by council.
I understand it's a living, breathing document, but never mind.
Thank you, Al, for your explanation. It is a living document. It will continue along as councils are in place. So we'll move forward. Al, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to complete the presentation. So with the structural refinement that's in front of council right now, council can now also allow and complement the structure with pay policies that better reflect a workplace of culture that promotes and rewards teamwork, customer service, and results. We need to remember that this is all part of a greater change management and modernization process. We need to refine the corporate culture by implementing pay for performance policies, provide fair wages, stressing teamwork, and a customer-first commitment. Positive changes will result over time. Next slide. In terms of recommendations, so it's recommended that council adopt and implement the new organizational structure, creating 6 distinct departments with defined accountabilities. Council will, if approved tonight, create a new position which will be entitled the Director of Development Services, and the funding will be reallocated from a previously funded position of the Director of Legislative Services. We'll create the new position of Corporate Strategic Coordinator, and that position, of course, will be supporting the fire department, our HR department, our clerks department, and the CAO. We'll also immediately commence the recruitment of 3 specific term and task positions: an asset management coordinator, a records management coordinator, and a climate action coordinator to bring those 3 files up to where they need to be and provide a long-term roadmap for those initiatives. And also, of course, most importantly, council will also be adopting a recommended revised pay grade and grid for all of our non-union staff effective retroactively to May 1st. We'll revise the township's current salary policy and salary grids from the 50th percentile to the 60th percentile effective immediately, with an automatic review of market comparators every 4 years, with a review confirming if the 60th percentile remains in the best interest of the township to attract and retain qualified talent. On our next slide, further recommendations include that we revamp our current pay policy for non-union staff to transform to a pay for performance compensation plan that focuses salary increases annually based on performance and contribution versus anniversary dates that do not necessarily reflect performance, commencing in 2022 for 2021 performance. The recommendations also provide that current staff, full-time non-unionized staff that were employed in 2020, with the exception of the CAO and those that arrived in December 2020, that the non-union staff receive a 1.9% increase over their 2020 pay to keep pace with our unionized workforce, and that be retroactive to May 1st, 2021. It also recommends that we immediately commence the recruitment for all of our current vacancies. We had put a pause on all of our current non-union vacancies, only awaiting the results of these recommendations. We didn't want to move forward and start hiring non-union full-time staff without knowing what these recommendations were going to be. And now with these recommendations, we can proceed with the hiring of all of our current vacant non-union positions. Furthermore, in 2022, it's recommended that we explore various options to supplement our bylaw enforcement capabilities. And in 2023, that we will explore options to expand our economic development strategies to help attract more jobs, tourism, etc., into the township. On our next slide. In terms of next steps, it's important that we talk about affordability and the rollout over the next 3 years and our ability to implement the recommendations without increasing the draft 2021 operating budget that's on the agenda tonight. So it's important that our ratepayers realize that all of these recommendations that are included for 2021 tonight can be accomplished and successfully implemented without impacting the draft budget that's in front of you tonight. The implementation will be gradual. It'll be filled with communication and education, mentoring of current staff, and ensuring buy-in from staff that we receive and we achieve the culture that we're looking to develop. We're excited that with council approval today, the administration will be further solidified and better able to deliver effective and efficient services and deliver on council's priorities. And with that, the next slide, Brittany. If there are any questions of council, I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Meneses. Does council, I'll wait until I have the full screen. I believe I have a full screen now, Madam Clerk.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. I have stopped sharing my screen.
Does council have any questions of Mr. Menes's report? And for some, I believe Councilor Colburn, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to our CAO. Thank you, Al, for that presentation. It does help to bring more of the concepts, bring more clarity, I would say, to some of the concepts. I appreciate that the changes that will happen fairly soon won't have an impact on our 2021 budget. But I think we'd be foolish to not understand that going forward, it will have an impact on our budget, and it will be a cumulative impact as the years go on. So I do have a couple of questions, and I know that I did ask this of our consultants as well. I'm not convinced I had a particularly satisfying answer to these questions, so I'm hoping you can do that for me. I'm looking at the 60th percentile target that you've described. So my question around that 60th percentile is, first of all, again, how did we land on 60 as opposed to 55 or even 50? If in fact we are falling below on average, below the 50th percentile, then why is it that we're aiming for more than 10% above where we currently are? More importantly, though, if I may, my second question is that 60th percentile, again, based on the original comparators that the consultants used, because they included places like the town of Collingwood, and I believe it was Orillia, Muskoka, Grey County, Bruce County, and my comments were and remain the same, that these are not appropriate comparators, not by any measure of criteria that you would typically use in defining a comparator, not by population, not by ability to pay, and so on, not even geographically. So I guess in short, is the 60th percentile based on the original comparators or a different set of comparators that more realistically reflect who our comparators should be, in my opinion? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Al, go ahead.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the comparators at 60th percentile were as recommended by the consultants. I think part of the analysis that happened when we went through this is we actually did a comparison and we tried to remove some of those that were highlighted in terms of the two counties, and then another analysis that removed the two counties, plus a couple of the larger comparators that were highlighted. And the reality was that it didn't have a significant impact in the overall scheme of things. You know, it's becoming an interesting marketplace out there, and I will tell you that some of the discussions that we had with our consultant was that, and they do this, and they're working on a lot of other townships and municipalities around the province, is that the marketplace for municipal staff is becoming more and more competitive. I think the work from anywhere movement that is likely going to remain is also putting some additional pressure on municipalities to attract and retain, because the reality is now when you go out looking for staff, you can cast a net that's far wider, and you don't necessarily need to stake to your geographical boundaries in order to attract talented staff. And some of those talented staff are going to be commanding top dollars. And that's what sort of the recommendations were based on. When you look at some of the turnover rates that we've had recently within Georgian Bluffs, that was another factor that was under consideration for trying to get to a place that we could attract and retain. And I will say the following, that the recommendation to move to the 60th percentile will not immediately result in any massive pay increases for anyone, or sort of put an immediate pressure on our salaries through the township. What it does is, when we get to a pay for performance program in 2022, what it will allow is additional runway for our top performers to work and get rewarded for that. It will not be an automatic increase for anyone. What it does is it allow a little more runway for our top performers to earn a competitive wage, to try to retain them and retain that institutional knowledge that they're gaining over time. So yes, it may have an upside pressure on salaries in out years, but I will say that that upside pressure will likely be counterbalanced by the reduced costs of onboarding and offboarding individuals. And that is a significant cost when you're bringing in new staff, trying to train them, trying to recruit them. So sometimes you got to pay some of those recruitment fees and recruiter fees as well. So that was the best knowledge and sort of the best recommendations from our consultants. We did challenge them on that. They were able to convince us that it made the most sense. And it's something that we are recommending to council, that we retain with those recommendations as were presented by the consultants.
Thank you, Al. Councillor Colburn, do you have a follow-up question?
Maybe not so much a question as a comment. I want to be clear. I am all in favor of paying our staff a competitive rate. Absolutely. We have terrific staff. We want to retain them, and we want to attract top talent as well. I guess we're going to have to agree to disagree, Mr. Meneses, on appropriate comparators. I don't believe that Little Georgian Bluffs should be attempting to be competitive with places like the two counties, or a town like Collingwood. Again, by definition, they don't seem to be comparable to Georgian Bluffs. So I want us to be very, very careful that the decisions we make don't fall once again on the shoulders of our ratepayers, and that we pay our staff well. We don't want to lag in salaries. We certainly don't want to lead either. We need to be realistic in terms of what our ratepayers can afford year after year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Colburn. Does any other council member have any comments or questions of Al's report? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're cutting out there again. I wasn't sure that you had recognized me yet. I just want to compliment Mr. Meneses on the report. I think it's an excellent report. I do tend to agree with the comparators. I think we want to compare to, especially the two counties, because that's who we're going to somewhat compete for some of these job positions. I like the 60th percentile. I am one who's a little in favor of being that leader out front there, because it will help us keep that good staff that we have and also attract further good staff. So I'm quite pleased with the report. I want to see our staff well paid, and I think there's some issues there reflected in the report, such as the ability for staff to work from home. So we're not just drawing from someone in our local area anymore. We're going outside of that area. So I think we need to be aware of that we're competing with a lot of other areas than we used to. So thank you very much for the report. I think it's excellent, and I'd like to see us move forward with it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I had to apologize to the public and to staff and council. My internet keeps cutting out. I have to have something done with it. It's very, very frustrating to try and conduct a meeting when I hear half the conversation, you hear half mine. So please advise, we need to do something about it. And I'm quite sure I can work with the clerk and see what we can do. Madam Clerk, is there any other comments from other council members?
I do not see any other hand raised. Councillor Councillor Barfoot, I do note that your microphone is unmuted. So did you wish to make a comment?
So would you take the vote?
No, thank you.
So
Okay.
Madam Clerk, will you take the vote, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, when I call your name, please indicate your vote. Councillor Carol Barfoot. Councillor Barfoot, you are muted.
You read the motion again, please, Brittany.
Absolutely. So the motion that is currently on the floor reads as follows. That council received the report dated May 12th, 2021, authored by Al Meneses, CAO, entitled Organizational Review, Recommendations, and Next Steps, and that the recommendations as included in this report are hereby approved, including amendments to the township pay grid and organizational structure, and that the financial impacts of the included recommendations be funded in part by the modernization grant and scheduled strategic implementation of new staffing positions as identified in this report, thereby remaining cost neutral to the township 2021 budget and tax rate, and that a bylaw to authorize the amended pay grid be presented at the June 2nd, 2021 meeting of council.
I just have one question. So that includes 500 and some odd thousand for the airport in that budget?
No.
If I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Barfoot, this is strictly in regards to the organizational review and compensation review recommendations. This does not apply to the airport budget.
Okay, just wanted to make that clear to anybody that's watching. For.
Thank you, Councillor Barfoot. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
Opposed?
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thank you. Moving off our agenda, we're down to public question period. Madam Clerk, did any members of the public register for any questions tonight?
They did not.
We're down to our zoning bylaws. This recommendation is 2021-35 being a bylaw to adopt out of vacant unit rebate program under section 364 is a Municipal Act 2001. You read it first, second, third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed and sealed the corporation and endorsed in the bylaw. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I call your name, please indicate your vote. Councillor Carol Barfoot,
For.
Kathy Moore Coburn,
4.
Councillor Ryan Thompson,
4.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton,
4.
and Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Thank you, and that carries.
Moving on for agenda, our next recommendation is a bylaw 2021-36, being a bylaw to 2021 operating and capital budgets for the Township of Georgian Bluffs. You read it first, second, third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed and sealed the corporation, and endorsed in the bylaw book. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by Councilor Thompson. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Councilor Colburn.
I apologize, Mr. Mayor. I will just shift my remarks from earlier in the agenda to this point and restate my position that I can't support the budget simply because it's asking us to keep the airport operational for 2021 again. I don't have the information I need to endorse that. And so therefore, I will not be supporting that part of the budget, which is unfortunate because the rest of the budget is excellent in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Colburn. Deputy Mayor Carlton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will agree. I would have liked to have seen the feasibility study on the airport before we proceeded with this tonight. However, I do still feel strongly that the airport is an asset of the municipality. I think attempting to withhold funding from it is what got us into the problem with the airport in the first place. And I think withholding further funds at this point just exacerbates the problem. So while I would have loved to have seen the feasibility study first, I still feel we need to move ahead and keep things moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Carlton. I agree with both your comments, you and Councilor Colburn. But the one thing that we have to realize by passing this budget, we're not really approving anything on at the airport property other than the ongoing expenses since January 1 of 2021. We need to pass a budget to cover those expenses. The feasibility study will definitely be coming here soon, I hope. And there's many more questions we need to ask over about the feasibility study. When that comes, we'll have that opportunity. So passing the budget tonight is not really approving anything more than operating expenses at the airport. Madam Clerk, I cannot see there's any other comment. Mr. Menez, go ahead, Al.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to just mention, just for sake of clarity, that included in your draft budget is roughly a net number of $456,000 to keep the airport running in 2021, but it also included in that number is about $71,000 that are slated for capital expenditures. And as our treasurer had mentioned previously, those $71,000 will not be spent until we know and this council makes a decision on the future of the airport. So if that gives you any comfort, you will have staff's assurance that that $71,000 will not be spent without further council consideration and after the feasibility study. So that might give you a little bit of comfort. I don't know if it does or not, but at least rest assured that we will not be spending those capital dollars until we know what the future of the airport will be.
Thank you, Mr. Menezes. Is there any other comments from council? Madam Clerk? Oh, Councilor Barfoot, I believe, her hand's up. Go ahead, Carol.
Okay, I just want to clarify a few things. I was around when the environmental study was done, but I don't ever recall seeing it. I would like to see a copy of that environmental study, or were there 2 environmental studies done? And I don't think that should, obviously we must have known that would be registered on title. Like it's, that's a pretty serious thing. One thing I want to make very clear, everybody keeps saying it's only so much, it's only so much. What happens if we have some type of a catastrophe within the municipality, within one of our water systems? I know we have reserves in our water systems, but you've got to remember, we have been telling the ratepayers of Georgian Bluffs for how many, 20 some odd years, oh, it's going to come, it's going to come. How long are we going to live on that promise? How long are people going to take this? It's gone on too long. Feasibility study or not. Everything's tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. I'm sick of talk. I want to see some action. I want to see some action. I want to see some protection for our ratepayers. Are we really looking after our ratepayers? Or are we looking after our ego? Come on, folks. I'm opposed to spending another dime.
Thank you. Is there any other comments from council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, you take the vote.
Councillor Thompson had his hand out there, Mr. Mayor.
I think he's probably told me to go ahead. I feel a sense of responsibility here because I feel like I've been here for a lot of this airport when we were partners to when we purchased it and right up to now. And we've said, I think I agree with part of what Councillor Barfoot, I think, was saying when we say we've made promises and we sort of this continues to keep shuffling along. And although I'm discouraged that we haven't moved ahead with a decision on the airport yet, I still don't see how stopping this budget really accomplishes that. The tough decision is not spending the capital money and moving a decision forward, which is a political decision. I think if we stop this budget, we're still going to continue to accrue the expenses that we have there on an operating basis. So I have reservations, but I think the key for us to make a decision in this airport isn't holding up the budget. It's moving to a political decision quickly. And you're right, we need the feasibility study for that, and then we need the conviction to make a decision. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Could you please move your screen so we could see your face on the screen? Better. Thank you. Councillor Coburn, your hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do agree with Councillor Thompson. It is a political decision. And in a way, I hate holding the budget ransom over this particular issue. But at the same time, we hear year after year after year that we're going to do something with the airport. We're going to make a decision. And in fact, all we ever do is kick the can down the road. We talk about this almost as a pittance in terms of our overall budget, and we look at our pie charts and we look at the sliver that represents what we pay to keep the airport open. But if you look at it another way, I wonder if it might have more of an impact. If you take the average municipal taxes in Georgian Bluffs and you look at the population of Shallow Lake, To keep the airport operational each year requires every single dime of the municipal taxes that the entire village of Shallow Lake pays every year, plus another 75 to 100 households. I've done the math. That's approximately what it takes to keep that airport running. It is not a pittance. It is money that could be better spent serving our residents, because currently that $500,000 is not serving our residents. And although I would like to say, let's have the fortitude, let's put the steel in our spine and make a political decision, we keep having that discussion and we keep kicking the can down the road. And so I'm not prepared to do that anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Colburn. Any other discussion on the motion before? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you take the vote, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the motion that remains on the floor is enactment of bylaw 2020-036, which will then authorize and approve the 2021 operating and capital budgets. So when I call your name, please indicate your vote. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
Opposed.
Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
Opposed.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries 3-2.
Thank you. We're moving on for agenda. Where's our next bylaw? The bylaw 2021-38 being a bylaw to amend procedural bylaw 2019-125. Be read first, second, third time. Passed, signed by the mayor, sealed and sealed. And someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Madam Clerk, I guess I'm gone.
Mr. Mayor, that was moved by, just pull up my minutes here, Deputy Mayor Carlton and Councillor Ryan Thompson. In just considering the difficulties you're having with your internet this evening, we may ask the Deputy Mayor to step in as chair for the remainder of the meeting, if you feel comfortable in doing so.
I can certainly do that. Do you want that motion read again before we move ahead?
Yes, please, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So that bylaw 2021-038 being a bylaw to amend procedure bylaw 2019-125 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed in the bylaw book. So we should probably have a new mover and seconder since I'm now chairing the meeting. So we'll Councillor Coburn and seconded by Councillor Thompson. Is there any discussion on the motion before we call the vote? Madam Clerk, I don't see anyone putting their hands up. So if you would call the vote, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. When I call your name, please indicate your vote. Councillor Carol Barfoot. Councillor Barfoot, you are muted.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
And Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
Thank you, and that carries.
Okay, moving on to unfinished business. We have a notice of motion. Whereas Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs received a request for support from the Canadian Union of Postal Workers at their meeting on April 21st, 2021. And whereas Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs supports the Canadian Union of Postal Workers in their campaign for community power through enhanced services. Now, therefore, the Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs enacts as follows. Whereas there is an urgent need for banking services among the unbanked or underbanked, given that thousands of villages and rural municipalities do not have a bank branch, and more than 900 municipalities have expressed their support for postal banking. Okay, so now my iPads, just a minute. Whereas thousands of Canadians do not have access to affordable high-speed internet, and the federal government has long promised to bridge the rural broadband gap, whereas urgent action is needed to establish a robust network of electric vehicle charging stations, whereas to achieve carbon neutral targets by 2050, Canada Post must greatly accelerate the electrification of its fleet, whereas the extensive network of post offices in our communities can provide a wide range of services as community hubs, whereas Canada Post letter carriers and RSMCs can check in on vulnerable residents to help keep us in our homes longer as we age, whereas Canada Post must play its part for a more equitable post-pandemic recovery, whereas the way forward for Canada Post, the report of the 2016 Federal Public Review of the Postal Service recommended that Canada Post expand services and adapt its services to the changing needs of the public, whereas the Canadian Union of Postal Workers has advanced delivering community power, a vision of the post-carbon digital age postal services that addresses the above needs and more, and that copies of this resolution be forwarded to the Honorable Anita Anand, Minister for Public Services and Procurement, and the Canadian Union for Postal Workers. Could I have a mover to put this on the floor, please? Councillor Thompson, and someone to second, please. Do we have someone to second?
Deputy Mayor Carlton, may I speak?
I think we need a seconder in the motion before we can speak to the motion. Because my assumption would be if there's no seconder that it does not proceed even to discussion.
Deputy Mayor, I'll second it just so we can discuss it.
Thank you, Councillor Barfoot. Go ahead, Mayor Burley.
I'm requesting that we defer this motion to a future meeting, so I may have better internet connection so I can speak to the motion. I cannot get this with the connection I have here tonight.
Okay, so do we need a mover and seconder then to defer, Madam Clerk?
That's correct. So Mayor Burley has presented a motion for deferral. If there's a seconder, we will then call the vote.
Councillor Coburn. Okay, and I will then ask you to call the vote, Madam Clerk.
If I may, and not to confuse things anymore this evening, but as deferral is procedural, we may just have a show of hands to that effect.
Okay. So show of hands to defer. Councillor Barfoot, we cannot see you.
Yeah, go ahead and defer it. May I just make one comment? Sorry.
Madam Clerk, I will turn that to you. Do we do discussion on it when we have deferred?
So if it's in relation to the deferral, then we can have the discussion. Otherwise, I would encourage council to have a detailed discussion regarding the motion when it comes back to council at your next meeting.
Okay, because I was just curious, because Canada Post has thousands and thousands of employees. We better be cautious on this one.
Okay, that will get discussed when we bring it back, once it's been brought back at a subsequent meeting.
Well, that's in case I'm not here next meeting.
Okay. Okay, so moving forward with the agenda, there's no new business. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, we will now need a motion to move into closed session so that Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs move into closed session at 6:57 p.m. in the council chambers with the CAO and clerk to discuss. Should that read virtually instead of in council chambers? Okay. So mover to move into closed session, Councillor Coburn, thank you. Councillor Thompson has seconded that. Show of hands, Madam Clerk, or do you need to take the vote? Councillor Thompson, do you have a question? Madam Clerk, just show of hands.
Yes, show of hands is fine.
Thank you. Okay. So we move out of this and go into closed section. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor, we are now live, and through you, I will commence the reporting out of closed session.
Thank you.
Council went into closed session to discuss matters under open meeting exemption K of section 239 of the Municipal Act. As a result of closed session discussions, the following actions were taken. In regards to item 19.1, direction was provided to staff regarding ongoing negotiations. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So we move on to the confirming bylaw. That bylaw 2021-039 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council on May 12th, 2021, be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed in the bylaw book. Could I have someone to move that motion, please? Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Coburn. Can we do a show of hands here, Madam Clerk, or do we need to call the vote?
It's been our practice to call the vote, so through
Okay.
you for now, I will do so.
Thank you.
So when I call your name, please indicate your vote. Councillor Carol Barfoot,
4.
Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn,
4.
Councillor Ryan Thompson,
4.
Deputy Mayor Burley is not present, and Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
4.
And that carries.
Okay, date of the next regular meeting is Committee of the Whole on May 19th at 5 p.m. Could we have someone to move adjournment of this meeting, please? Councillor Coburn, seconded by
So move.
Councillor Barfoot. Show of hands, all in favor? Thank you, everyone. Hopefully we can soon get all internet fixed, so it's not so painful of a meeting.